It's great to be back. I think this is perhaps going to be one of the most sought-after panels, so I hope that those that are in the waiting room will come in and join us, because one of the things that we want to try to accomplish starting at 11 o'clock is this event, this panel will be live streamed, and we want to maybe break a record and have it the largest live streamed blockchain panel ever. So let's, if you have, following on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, please put that out there and have them follow along. My name is Adrienne Batra. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Toronto Sun, and it's a pleasure to be back here with the CryptoChicks, because I think what they're doing, this conversation that they're having is pretty extraordinary, and all of you are such a significant part of that. I know that many of you know them, follow them, maybe have some questions for them. So I'm hoping that we can try to engage in a candid, honest way about the future of blockchain and artificial intelligence. I always joke I'm in the newspaper industry, so maybe someone in this room is going to figure out how I can start making money again. Maybe there's a blockchain for that Vitalik, you can come up with for me. That would be really helpful. So with that very small introduction, because I don't think that these guys really need much of an introduction, and you know how to access all of their information, we will begin. Is there a handheld for me as well, or do you guys want me to do it from here? Is there a handheld? Okay. Is there also a ladder I can get up on this chair? Sure, no problems. All right. So as we wait for that, as I said, 11 o'clock is now hit the, oh, thank you. We have now hit 11 o'clock. If you do want to share on your social platforms that we are continuing with this conversation with Vitalik and Ben, please do. Well, good morning to both of you. It's great to have you here.
Good morning.
All right, enjoying yourself so far, I can imagine. Let's get right to it. Two of the platforms that both of you are so integrally part of, founders of, in so many ways, blockchain and AI, individually have such a significant impact on the future, how we think about things, how we are changing our own lives. But Ben, let me start with you. How do you view AI actually benefiting blockchain? And then Vitalik, I'm going to have the same question for you.
Benefiting blockchain or benefiting from blockchain?
Benefiting from blockchain.
So, oh yeah, because I mean, there are both directions.
Yeah.
I would say I'm really more of an AI guy. I've been doing AI since the 1980s, and all the way back to the late 90s, I was, daydreaming and then theorizing about how would you make a decentralized network of AIs, just a multi-agent system spanning the globe with AIs communicating and collaborating with other AIs, which didn't need any central controller. And Marvin Minsky, one of the pioneers of the AI field, had the idea of a society of minds, where he envisioned intelligence emerging as a sort of collective dynamic among many different AIs cooperating together in a way that the intelligence in the whole would exceed the sum of the intelligences of the parts. In the late 90s, it was easy to imagine how to do this, and we had distributed computing, we had cryptography too, but all the pieces weren't really put together, and it was a pain to try to implement something like that. I mean, unless we can create things which have equal or greater utility in a way that respects agency and privacy, people don't actually care enough about privacy not to use the services big companies are offering. So to give one simple example, like I use Google News all the time. Mm-hmm. At one point I got annoyed and I disabled the personalization there, and then I'm like, why am I getting all this garbage news I don't care about? The world has become very boring all of a sudden, right? So once you re-enable the personalization, then I get news about AI, about blockchain, about Buckethead or musicians I like, countries I may want to travel to. But the problem is that model of my interests is opaque to me, and it's stored within the mind of some massive proprietary brain that Google is building and probably sharing with the NSA to spy on my friends or something, right? And so the service should be offered. But
they're watching the live stream right now, actually.
Oh, I'm sure they're watching. I'm sure they're watching many of us in this room all the time. But,
oh dear.
Yeah. So
It only took 13 minutes to get to that point.
Yeah, we can say hi to the Chinese and Russian Secret Service.
Hi, Vlad.
Hey Xi, hey Vladimir.
Well, that's you know, you say it facetiously, but that's part of the issue with the Huawei platform. You know, we always kind of joke that, okay, don't spy on me, but
well, who built the Great Firewall of China? Cisco built it originally, right? So I mean, China is doing surveillance, U.S. is doing surveillance. Everyone's doing surveillance, and there's not much evidence any great power is so much holier than the other ones. I mean, what you need is obviously the infrastructure of AI and big data management to be more like Ethereum, BitTorrent, or Pirate Bay. You know,
on the peer-to-peer side.
We need it to be on the peer-to-peer side, and we need people to have the control and agency over their own data and transparency into how it's being used. And of course, blockchain itself doesn't achieve that, but it's a tool that is part of how you achieve that.
Vitalik?
Yeah, so the good news is that there's definitely no law of information theory that says that in order to get the benefits of evaluating some function on a huge piece of data, that data needs to all be in one place in a way that's accessible to big, powerful, centralized powers that be to evaluate whatever other functions they want on it. So there's been a lot of really interesting work in cryptography the last couple of decades on trying to make these more kind of decentralized machine learning protocols where you can learn and execute models on pieces of data without that data ever actually leaving the person's computer in an unencrypted form. And that's something that there's been a lot of projects around in the last couple of years. There's even a lot of blockchain tie-ins here because there's at least a couple of projects I know about that are trying to make these kind of blockchain-mediated data markets where basically on the app you would hold the data and then you would automatically just participate in these markets where you would let them run some computation, and in exchange you would automatically get some kind of payment, and that would just ensure that you can get the benefits of things like personalized news feeds, and even get the social benefits of your information being part of the thing that helps train these algorithms for everyone without your individual information actually kind of leaving your own machine, right? And this is something that's becoming more and more possible technologically. On a political front, I recently wrote this article. It's right at the top of my blog, vitalik.ca, called Control as Liability. And the thesis I made there is that while 10 years ago, having more data of your users is basically a pure benefit, because like, hey, you know, why not just grab all that I can? It's just more things that I might be able to run some math on in the future. But now with regulations coming in, data localization laws, privacy laws, regulatory agencies trying to kind of define the idea of basically regulating central controllers and trying to define what exactly is a central controller versus what is a software provider. It's actually creating a lot of incentives to build applications in ways that do minimize the application developer's ability to kind of see everything that's going on, right? So whereas if all of the data is actually being uploaded to a server in Silicon Valley, then you get like all of the political consequences that come with that. But if you're just building a piece of software where all of the data stays on the local machine and you're just building the thing that these local machines use to interact with each other, then it's much simpler for you, right? So there definitely is a kind of both technical and economic opportunity to build things that work differently than the way things have worked the last decade.
But you need the data, you need the information, that's sort of the oxygen for these.
Sure, well, you need the data, but you do not need the data in a form which is decrypted in a way that you can actually see it and use it for all of these other more nefarious purposes or get hacked.
So let me pivot that then, Ben, to you. Within the applying blockchain and in the AI. So what are the biggest challenges that you're facing right now as this sort of is an emerging area?
Well, the challenges of applying blockchain in AI, I guess there's technical challenges, and then there's sort of market and psychological challenges, right? So we launched the beta version of SingularityNET platform in February. I mean, using Ethereum as the blockchain layer, and this lets you have different AI agents, you know, running in the network where things like payment and identity management and reputation rating and so on use the blockchain, but passing large bunches of data around, or the AI processing itself is all done off chain, and you can set up sort of persistent channels between different AI agents that will send information back and forth efficiently and can last quite a long time. So then I mean, there are still a lot of technical things we would like to do that neither Ethereum nor any other current blockchain will do now. So for what we're doing now, Ethereum is actually great. It's fine. I mean, we have a set of AI agents that they live for a while. They maintain relationships with customers or with other AIs for a while. AIs can outsource to other AIs, and they can cooperate on things. And as long as these relations are somewhat persistent between agents, then you're cool. Now, in the long-term vision that we've had for a long time, we want it to be more like dynamically assembled microservices, where you would have one AI that's, say, summarizing a document, but if it encounters some complex medical terminology, you know, in the course of summarizing that document, which might take 1/10 of a second, it could put out a request and find, you know, 10 other agents that know about medicine. One of them could create a new agent to answer questions about medicine in the exact context of that document, and then it would integrate all that knowledge into its answer, right? So if you really want microservices where new relations between agents are being established rapidly in the course of answering like a query in real time, I mean, our platform won't do that right now, and the only way we could figure out to do that now would be to just do pretty much everything off-chain, which kind of obviates the point of using a blockchain in the first place. But that doesn't mean these are like insuperable obstacles, though. I mean, they're just computer science and software engineering challenges which are being worked on. So that's the technical side, but the adoption side is different and is in some ways even subtler, because getting developers to put their AI code into this decentralized platform is one thing. In many cases, they'll do it for the cool value of it. Getting users of AI, which in many cases are corporations, large and small, many of whom are not that technically savvy, but they need AI to drive their business, getting them to use this sort of weird decentralized blockchain-based network, it's an interesting marketing challenge. In some ways, it's eased by the popularity of blockchain, because the fact that you're using blockchain is perceived as cool, and also a big company in, say, pharmaceuticals or automotive industry, they don't necessarily want to rely on Google, Facebook, or Microsoft for all their needs either. So the fact that it's owned by everyone and no one can be perceived as a plus. Yeah. On the other hand, they have to think it's going to be scalable and reliable and secure and solve all their problems. So there's that marketing issue, which is being confronted by the whole blockchain sector, really, is getting taken seriously.
But you address sort of the democratization of it as well, and sort of it's quite egalitarian. So you were nodding your head when Ben was speaking about some of the significant challenges. So from your perspective, though, are there more things that need to be done, can be done, should be done?
I mean, there's definitely very...
I mean, you guys will be put out of business, I suppose, if there's not more to be done.
Yeah, and there's definitely very significant technical challenges still to be solved. Scalability is probably the biggest one. Right now, there's just not enough space on blockchains to make these privacy-preserving cryptographic data markets work for more than a few 100,000 people if people started really using them. And that's something that's being actively worked on, and there's all of these different like layer 1, layer 2 scaling solutions. You'll hear about at these crypto conferences. So it's definitely on its way to improving quite a bit. Privacy is another one, and I expect privacy to be mostly improved by this kind of fusion of blockchains with other cryptographic technologies that provide all of these really magical properties of being able to like encrypt data and make proofs that work only if you have like pieces of data that satisfy particular functions. So you can use them as building blocks to build things with pretty much whatever properties you want. There's problems around like user level security is another big one. So like this idea of using your own data becomes less credible if just everyone is using them on phones that are incredibly insecure and can get really easily hacked if like someone goes into T-Mobile and like switches your phone number, which just happens to like 5 of my friends literally 3 days ago. So there's definitely challenges in this space, but very recently there's been a lot of like very good work from different parts in the blockchain space to address each one of them, so I'm optimistic.
I'd say homomorphic encryption is another example, which is sort of implied by some of the comments Vitalik was making earlier. So if you want to do something like Ocean Protocol is doing, which is one of the projects that doing something, as he was alluding to, lets you keep a bunch of data on your own server. AI nodes in Docker containers or something can visit that server and crunch the data and even get results for you, but the data never leaves your server. But if you're really paranoid and don't want that container, that AI agent, to even see all the details of your data, in theory, like there's math there, you can homomorphically encrypt that data in a way that lets the AI see only certain properties of the data instead of seeing all the data. Numeri is based on that for time series prediction, for example. There's a bunch of blockchain startups working on that in the medical space, so we could crunch your medical data to see only the properties of that data that are needed to tell if you are susceptible to some disease or something, but without seeing enough of your medical data to uniquely identify you. This is really nice. The thing is that actually applying like a large neural net model on homomorphically encrypted version of your genomic data or something would be way, way too slow to do right now. I mean, there's no fundamental reason why it has to be, but there's just a lot of math and computer science work to be done to sort of cash out this vision that the aspects of the data that a certain AI needs to see are the only ones that it's going to see. But I mean, all this will come.
Is China doing that with X-rays?
China?
Yeah,
Well, why would they care about that?
China is really taking X-rays of their citizens and releasing that information to find anomalies and
well, that's true, but I don't believe they're homomorphically encrypting the X-rays.
No, of course.
I mean, the beauty of being China is they can just collect everyone's data, and most people there aren't too worried about it because the culture is a bit different, and they're using blockchain quite effectively there, largely to reduce corruption across different levels of government, but they don't have a big issue with keeping their own data private from the government there, which simplifies things. But I think ultimately we can progress better by developing the same technologies in a decentralized way that gives more agency to the individuals and the organizations at different scales. But to do things in a way that's decentralized does require more computer science effort that still has to be done.
Well, we wanted to leave some time for questions from the floor because it's a pretty extraordinary opportunity to have these two individuals here at the same time in the same space. So I don't know if you guys have a roaming mic that you want to use or if you want to just stand up and pose your question, please. I think, ma'am, you're going to have to come a little bit closer, or someone take this mic and.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, it's too quiet for the live stream, especially.
Okay, that's fine. Hi, thank you. My name is Nikki Ram. I have a question for Vitalik. I understand that obviously scalability and energy is a big issue, especially. So I was thinking, my question is, what do you think about companies like Holochain that they propose that they solve those sort of issues?
I don't know anything about holochain, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. But how would you propose does Ethereum in the future want to solve something like that?
Summarize
Yeah,
future
I mean,
plans
we're-
for Ethereum scaling in 5 words or
In
less.
terms of like,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of energy efficiency issues, like our proof of stake is basically the main thing we're doing to try to cut that down in the short term. So we have test nets of proof of stake chains running for the last few weeks now. So that's actually coming very close to launching. And when that happens, we won't need all of this extremely energy efficient, inefficient mining anymore, and we can reduce the energy consumption of the network by a really huge amount. And then for scalability, sharding, and redesigning the blockchain so that every computer in the network only needs to verify a small portion of all the transactions is something that's been really actively worked on as well. And it's like a bit behind proof of stake, but not that far behind.
You know, I have a question for you, which is, in working on sharding, for example, or proof of stake, how much are you slowed down by the need to have backwards compatibility with the currently working Ethereum network, as opposed to if you were just like implementing something new that you just thought of today?
I mean, the approach that we're taking kind of is close to creating something new. Like it's creating a new chain with like all of the different improved bits kind of coming at the same time. And the idea is that the existing chain will kind of be folded into the new system.
I see. Cool.
So, yeah, it's like actually not that high a cost. Like it would have definitely been 5 times more difficult if we tried to kind of incrementally redesign the system piece by piece, and then we would have had to like keep some core in the middle that would have just stayed working under the old rules and so forth, and it would have led to a much more complex system.
Great.
We must have another. Oh, yes. I think we need the microphone. Thank you.
It's a less technical question, and it's more, in your lives, did philosophy or math come first? Which one came first? Both of you.
Go ahead, Ben.
Me? Well, I guess, literally speaking, probably math came first. Like I learned to do math before I knew what philosophy was. I probably learned arithmetic when I was 2 years old or something. But then my mother was doing graduate work in Chinese history and philosophy when I was 6 to 8 years old. So I read a whole bunch of philosophy then. But yeah, I would say in my own generation, AI was not popular. Right, I mean, I learned about AI from Star Trek and Space 1999 with these cheesy robots in them. But in my generation, to get into AI, you really had to start thinking things through from scratch. Like, how does the mind work? What is intelligence? And both math, philosophy, biology, linguistics, neuroscience, everything plays in. And I came to computer science much later when I was like 13 or 14, because before that you couldn't get a computer to play with. But that was the 1970s. This was like before this dude was born. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was much younger, I mean, math was definitely a big part of my life, whereas philosophy was more like reading these fun books about whether or not you should push the fat guy off a cliff so he lands on a railroad and stops the trolley from killing 5 other people, which is like really interesting, but it was fairly academic.
it depends if you can video him falling or not.
Yeah, which is like interesting, but more kind of academic until much more recently. And the blockchain space is really interesting in how it kind of weaves together all of those different parts and takes from all of them.
There's a question. Do you want to hand the microphone off? Thank you.
So a question for Vitalik. So do you think, that in your long-term vision, you are going to use artificial intelligence to govern Ethereum and the protocol?
Probably not.
So why?
I mean, my view on like AI and blockchains is that I think AI makes much more sense at the edge of blockchain systems rather than at the center of them. And the problem with putting it at the center, right, is that we're basically putting these algorithms in the middle of things and giving of pieces of basic infrastructure and giving them huge power over them when we have no idea how these algorithms work. The designers might have some idea, but not 100% of an idea, and then it ends up being like either it's completely opaque to all of the users of the system, or often if it's not opaque, you can do adversarial learning on it, and then anyone can figure out how to cheat the system. So like AIs and kind of quote algorithms running things often has this problem that you have to like, basically choose between them being opaque versus them being really exploitable if they're at the center. Whereas if you, instead of talking about algorithms, you talk about blockchains and mechanisms, so tools for different agents to cooperate with each other, then at least the hope is that you don't have a lot of those same issues. And I mean, the AIs can participate in the mechanisms.
I mean, I would say that before too long, it will be de facto AIs that are governing whatever are the dominant blockchain networks, quite possibly Ethereum. I mean, simply because if AIs are doing most of the business and AI-run DAOs are the next Google, Facebook, and Baidu and whatnot, it's going to be AIs that are owning the tokens and that are doing the voting. And who can, I mean, is it really going to be feasible to put an "Are you a human?" test every time you vote? So I doubt it. But with the AI technology we have right now at this exact moment, however, yeah, it's got to be humans, because the AIs don't have an understanding of context, and they're just being proxies for some human in a very specific way anyway. So I mean, you have to, if you build in predicted advancement in AI, my own answer would be quite different. But that's good. We had to disagree on something. Otherwise, it's not a real panel.
It's not a real panel. We have time for a couple more questions, and depending on these fine gentlemen up here, how quickly they answer, maybe we can get a few more in. Yes,
They're
sir.
a false question.
Yeah.
False.
That's awesome.
One word answers. Go ahead, sir.
You can say it twice. So I'm still going to ask a question. Before I actually ask a question, AI is probabilistic and crypto is deterministic, and I think we want to bring crypto into AI, not the other way around. I'm hoping that you guys agree with that. Now, what is a question to Ben? What is it being done globally to truly bring decentralization into AI today, given that a lot of centralized forces, they're actually driving AI a lot more than decentralized? So what is it being done to actually counter that force?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. I think we have the plumbing now for decentralized AI by projects like SingularityNET, which is my own project, Ocean Protocol, and actually dozens of other projects out there, mostly building on Ethereum network. And so we have the plumbing now to do decentralized AI. And as you are aware, since you are the co-founder of it, we've created an industry alliance called DAIA, Decentralized AI Alliance, which is sort of bringing together around 50 and growing different projects using AI and blockchain together, and interoperability being the next challenge there. So it's a network of AI networks on blockchain. So there's of course more work to do, but if we take for granted that sort of the decentralized AI plumbing problem is now solved. I mean, as of this year, with things like Singularity and Ocean actually shipping, working reasonably scalable betas, then it's adoption, right? And that comes down to, usability. Can we make these as slick to use as TensorFlow or all of Google's various tools? And then it comes down to marketing among users and developers, none of which are trivial problems, however, and a lot of us would rather work on the nitty-gritty algorithmic and computer science problems than on marketing and community building. And these big companies that you mentioned are very, very good at these aspects of marketing to users and to developers also. So I think we are moving on to a phase now where the question isn't like, can decentralized AI work, or is it way, way ahead of its time or something? The question is now, can we get people to actually develop for it and use it when there's insane amounts of money being spent making centralized approaches really appealing and really easy?
Whoever's running the shot clock here keeps giving me more time. So There's a little basketball reference, for the Toronto Raptors fans.
Tufi is hacked into the laws of physics.
It's perfect.
He-
Okay.
He has a way of
That's
doing
actually
that.
very helpful because I think that there are more and more questions that seem to be popping up as this conversation continues to go. But you have the microphone, sir, so you get to go first.
Vitalik, you've mentioned in the past that decentralized finance will be one of the early applications of Ethereum and one of the easiest ones, perhaps, to begin with. Then also throughout the talks today, people have mentioned that AI was applied to markets quite early on. Now, knowing this, what do you think the first AI applications will be towards decentralized finance?
Arbitrage bots.
Yes, yes. So the spreads between exchanges are quite high. That you think will be the first thing to go?
I mean, the spread between exchanges is much lower than it was years ago because the arbitrage bots have gotten better already, right? And they have been quite fast. Like I remember when Uniswap launched, there started to be automated arbitrage happening for it, like pretty much within days. And that was a fundamentally new type of exchange that got pushed out. So, and there's definitely, when there's incentives, there's definitely smart people that'll swarm around them.
I think I saw a hand over here. Sir, do you mind coming and let's make this a true democracy and hand the microphones over. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is related to Tesla network. Ben, do you see there's any benefit to have a decentralized AI on the Tesla network? And the question for Vitalik is that so far, Tesla network have never mentioned anything about blockchain. If you get a chance to talk to Elon Musk, what kind of advice would you give to him?
Is that a subtle addressing of the Twitter battle you two had? I'm not sure, but go ahead, Vitalik.
I mean, I don't know, right? Like, not everything has like blockchain applications that immediately make a lot of sense. And if Elon came and asked, like, what's one way that we can like integrate Ethereum to make the Tesla cars better right now, I'm not sure I'd be able to say too much. In the longer term, when we have things like blockchain-based markets and for different infrastructure and markets for data, and a lot of these applications get integrated into supply chains and so forth, there probably will be more things, but it's not necessarily the ideal kind of first use case to start trying to push out to millions of people with.
Well, I could tell you one application that would be very critical as you move toward autonomous driving. I mean, you have many different companies doing autonomous driving with computer vision systems, and one issue you have is that given the deep neural net systems used for computer vision now, these systems stick overly close to their training data. So if something bad happens in the road, which is a situation that wasn't represented in the training data, the car won't recognize it, and then it'll run over that zoo animal, or it will react in a bad way to the truck that veered across the median of the highway or something. So on the other hand, what's happening is each company is keeping its own data from its own cars because that data is valuable to creating their autonomous system, right? So what you should have happen is, okay, if different companies making fleets of autonomous cars need to keep some of their data private to tune their cars better, let them keep it private, but they should be sharing data that's critical to human safety among all the different companies making self-driving cars. And this sort of thing where you're sharing certain aspects of data and you're keeping private other aspects of data. I mean, in principle, this is something that blockchain with homomorphic encryption, multi-party computation, various of these computer science tricks should be really useful for. And again, though, the core application I see there is for sharing of data and processing among multiple entities that don't necessarily fully trust each other, meaning competing self-driving car companies. Like solely within Tesla's own network, it's not obvious there's a huge immediate application, but the application I described would be highly valuable, and probably Elon Musk would get that and would be interested in it. But I would say everyone who's trying to build amazing new technology has a long list of problems to solve, and then it's a matter of when does something jump to the top of the list, right? But perhaps Elon is watching this live stream right now, and your question will start a new collaboration among the three of us.
All right, we know we really are coming down to the time crunch. I have time for 2 more questions. Yes, sir.
This is for both Ben and Vitalik. You brought up several points that, on one hand, advocate decentralization, but also at the same time seems to create some inconsistency. One is, as you actually provide data on a publicly open decentralized system, through sophisticated algorithms, we can at times predict who these people are. So some of the anonymity vanishes with time. And secondly, the idea that, the idea that AI can help move away from the dominance of a few players, but the reality is there's only a few players who have the intellectual capital to build these systems, and the rest of us who may not quite be in the same position to be able to control that. I wanted to get your opinions on those two.
Well, so first of all, I would say decentralization is not one system of organization. I mean, it's the opposite of having an oligopoly or a dictator, right? So just as in politics, you say there's no dictator or no collection of oligarchs ruling everything, that doesn't tell you what the alternate system is. It just opens things up. So, I mean, decentralization is like that, and that's the beauty of the flexibility of smart contract-based frameworks. I mean, you can script many modes of organization. So some decentralized systems of organizing AIs and peoples would be horrible and much worse than the current centralized systems, and the best of them, I think, would be much better than the current centralized systems. In terms of the supposed concentration of AI talent and expertise, I mean, this is a social organization phenomenon, right? Because why are AI PhDs going to work for these big companies instead of doing something else? I mean, the expertise isn't in the CEO or the board of the company. The expertise is in AI programmers who are choosing to work for them instead of doing something else. So I think, while it's not quite the same thing, I often hold out Linux as an interesting example of how something extremely influential in the whole world's software technology infrastructure was developed outside the hegemony of large corporations. And I'm old enough to remember when people said that would be impossible. Open source could never work because people fundamentally, need to be developing stuff that they own. So the thing is, open source isn't good enough when you're dealing with things that need huge amounts of processing power and huge amounts of data, because even if the code is open source, whoever has the big hard drive and all the processors still has the autocratic control. So you need to go a little bit beyond open source, and you need decentralized control of data storage and processing. And if you throw into that decentralized modes of incentivization, which is what comes with tokenomic infrastructures, then I think you have the key that can allow a different sort of socioeconomic organization to self-organize along with these new technologies, which can break up this hegemony, which seems strange now, but again, it seemed strange at one point that Google and Facebook and so on could become so big, and like Wang and Honeywell and so forth would become footnotes in history. So I think it's not at all outlandish to envision that in 5 or 10 years, DAOs and decentralized networks, leveraging contributions of developers all over the world and AIs running all over the world can be much bigger than these centralized corporations now.
That was Ben keeping it brief, by the way. So, good job. Vitalik, you're going to get the last word here.
Yeah, and I think it's, regarding the other point, it's definitely easy to underestimate the power of math and cryptography. Like, it definitely is possible to create a system which allows you to have something like a personalized newsfeed where your own data stays entirely 100% on your local computer, and there's computations being done on the local computer. Like, it's also possible to have systems where data from your own activity contributes to the result of some model, where it actually is the case that there's only a few bits of data leaving your computer, and those bits are designed in such a way that it doesn't significantly de-anonymize you. So there's definitely a lot of things that can be done, and even if it's not perfect, it's still can very easily be a large improvement on the status quo.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that some of you had questions for them. They will be hanging around, and you have more of an opportunity to engage with them one-on-one. But I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you, both Ben and Vitalik, for your candor, honesty. It's pretty extraordinary group of people to talk in front of, and so everybody benefited from hearing from you. Thank you.